I want to start with a number, 1200 BCE. That is the year the Bronze Age ended. Not gradually, not through the slow erosion of time. It ended the way a structure collapses when the load-bearing walls are removed simultaneously. Cities that had stood for centuries were burned and not rebuilt. Trade networks that had connected Egypt to the Hittites, to the Aegean, to the Levant dissolved within a generation. Writing systems disappeared. Administrative records stopped. The most sophisticated international system the ancient world had yet produced simply ceased to function. The Egyptians left us a name for one of the forces involved. They carved it into stone at Medinet Habu. They called them the Sea Peoples. That name tells us almost nothing about who they were. What the archaeology tells us is more specific, more complicated, and more difficult to explain away than the name suggests. Before the collapse, there was a system. It is worth pausing on what that system actually was, because the scale of what was lost only becomes legible when you understand what existed before it. The late Bronze Age Mediterranean was not a collection of isolated kingdoms occasionally trading with their neighbors. It was an integrated economic and diplomatic network of a sophistication that would not be matched again for more than 1,000 years. Egypt supplied grain and gold. The Hittites controlled the Anatolian plateau and its metal deposits. Ugarit on the Syrian coast functioned as the commercial hub through which goods and correspondence moved between east and west. Mycenae in Greece produced olive oil and fine pottery that reached markets across the entire Mediterranean basin. Cyprus sat at the center of the copper trade, the metal that gave the age its name. These were not independent systems. They were interdependent ones. Egypt needed cedar from Lebanon to build its ships and temples. The Hittites needed tin from sources as far east as Afghanistan to alloy with copper and produce bronze. Remove one node and the others felt the pressure. The pressure began before the Sea Peoples appeared in any inscription. Letters recovered from the archives of this period describe kings requesting emergency grain shipments, describing famine, describing populations in motion. The system was already straining at its connections before anything arrived from the sea. The most direct evidence we have for the Sea Peoples is carved in stone. At Medinet Habu, on the west bank of the Nile near Luxor, the mortuary temple of Ramesses III preserves the most detailed account that survives of what happened when the Sea Peoples reached Egypt. The inscriptions are not brief. They are extensive, specific, and clearly intended to document something the Egyptians considered a defining moment in their history. What the carvings record is this: a coalition of peoples, named in the inscriptions as distinct groups, attacked Egypt by land and by sea simultaneously around 1177 BCE. They came equipped for permanent relocation, not temporary raiding. The reliefs show not just warriors, but carts carrying women, children, livestock, and household possessions. This was not an army on campaign, it was a population in movement. The name groups include the Peliset, the Checker, the Shekelesh, the Denyen, and the Weshesh. Scholars have proposed connections between these names and later known peoples. The Peliset in particular are widely associated with the Philistines who subsequently settled the Canaanite coast. What the inscriptions do not record is where these groups came from before they reached Egypt's borders. Ramesses describes defeating them. He does not describe their origin. The stone tells us what they did. It does not tell us what drove them. That answer is not in the temple. It is in the ground. The archaeology does not lie, but it does require careful reading. Ugarit is where the physical record becomes most difficult to look at without a sense of weight. This was one of the great commercial cities of the ancient world, a port through which the trade of 3 continents flowed for centuries. When archaeologists excavated it, what they found in its final destruction layer was specific: burned grain stores, collapsed administrative buildings, unfinished letters still in the kilns, where they were being fired when the city ended. One of those letters is a request for emergency military assistance. It was never sent. The city was destroyed before it could be dispatched. Whatever arrived at Ugarit arrived faster than the city's final correspondence. Hattusa tells a different story. The Hittite capital was not burned in the conventional sense. It was abandoned. The destruction there is not the destruction of overwhelming assault. It is the destruction of departure, of a population that left before the end came and did not return. That pattern, population departure preceding physical destruction, appears at more than one site in this period. Mycenae shows looting and administrative collapse. The linear B tablets, the administrative records of the Mycenaean palace system, simply stop. Not destroyed in all cases, simply discontinued. The bureaucratic infrastructure that produced them ceased to function and was never reconstituted. 3 sites, 3 different patterns, 1 convergent outcome. The identity question is where the evidence becomes genuinely complicated. The Egyptians gave us names. The archaeology gives us material culture. Neither gives us a clean origin point, and I think it is important to sit with that honestly rather than reach for a tidy answer the evidence does not support. What the pottery tells us is significant. In the destruction layers immediately following the collapse, a distinctive ceramic tradition appears along the Canaanite coast. It is Aegean in character. The shapes, the decorative conventions, the firing techniques all point westward, toward the Greek world, toward the islands, toward a population that originated somewhere in the Aegean basin and arrived on the Levantine coast during or immediately after the period of maximum destruction. The helmet and shield iconography carved at Medinet Habu reinforces this. The feathered headdresses, the round shields, the long swords depicted in the reliefs are not Egyptian, not Hittite, not Canaanite. They belong to a visual tradition rooted in the Aegean. Recent DNA analysis of skeletal remains from Philistine burial sites at Ashkelon has added a further layer. The genetic profile of early Philistine individuals shows significant European ancestry absent in the local Canaanite population, consistent with migration from the Aegean or southern European coast. The evidence does not point to a single people with a single origin. It points to a coalition. Multiple groups, multiple starting points. One direction of movement. In 1177 BCE, the Sea Peoples reached Egypt, and Egypt was ready for them. What Ramesses III devised was not a conventional defensive engagement. The reliefs at Medinet Habu record a deliberate, strategic trap, and the physical detail preserved in those carvings is precise enough to reconstruct the engagement with reasonable confidence. The Sea Peoples fleet entered the channels of the Nile Delta. The waterways are narrow, branching, and difficult to navigate for large vessels unfamiliar with their geography. Egyptian warships, smaller and purpose-built for these conditions, waited further upstream. On the banks, infantry and archers were positioned at intervals along the approach route. The assault came from multiple directions simultaneously. Archers on the banks fired into the fleet as it moved through the channels. Egyptian vessels closed from upstream, using hooks and ropes to disable enemy ships and prevent retreat. The carvings show the precise mechanics of this. Enemy vessels lashed and immobilized while Egyptian soldiers crossed onto their decks. The Sea Peoples were defeated. The inscriptions are explicit on this point, and the archaeological record does not contradict them. There is no evidence of Sea Peoples' settlement in Egypt following this engagement. But Egypt's victory was not restoration. The treasury was depleted, the military was diminished. The trade networks that had sustained the empire were already broken and did not reassemble. Ramesses had saved Egypt from conquest. He could not save it from what the collapse had already done. The question the evidence keeps returning to is this: were the Sea Peoples the cause of the Bronze Age collapse, or a symptom of pressures that were already destroying the world they moved through? I want to be precise about what the physical record actually establishes here because the distinction matters. Paleoclimatological data recovered from pollen cores, isotope analysis, and tree ring sequences across the eastern Mediterranean documents a prolonged drought event beginning around 1200 BCE, not a single bad season. a multi-decade reduction in rainfall that would have compressed agricultural output across the entire region simultaneously. Grain stores that the interconnected Bronze Age system depended on for its stability were not being replenished at the rate the system required. Seismic data adds another layer. Several of the destruction sites from this period show earthquake signatures in their collapse patterns, structural failures consistent with ground movement rather than fire or military assault. What the system's collapse model proposes and what the physical evidence supports is that the Bronze Age world was already failing when the Sea Peoples moved through it. The interdependence that made it sophisticated made it collectively fragile. Stress applied to one node propagated through the entire network. The Sea Peoples were almost certainly themselves refugees of this process. Populations displaced by drought, famine, and regional collapse further north and west, moving south and east into a world that was simultaneously collapsing around them. They did not end the Bronze Age alone. They moved through its ending. I want to return to that number, 1200 BCE. What the physical evidence establishes is this. The Bronze Age did not end because one force arrived and destroyed it. It ended because a system of extraordinary complexity and extraordinary interdependence encountered stresses it could not absorb simultaneously. Climate, seismic activity, famine, population displacement, and moving through all of it, the Sea Peoples. Visible in the Egyptian stone, present in the destruction layers, traceable in the pottery and the DNA, but not the single explanation the name sometimes implies. The unfinished letter in the ruins of Ugarit is still the detail I return to. Someone was writing it when the end came. They did not finish it. They did not send it. Whatever destroyed the Bronze Age arrived faster than the last correspondence of one of its greatest cities. The ruins are still being excavated. The answer is still incomplete.